So now the PO's trying, you're not ready. You're not ready to hear the message, or it wasn't you couldn't find that connection with that person to trust them enough to be able to do that. And then it leads to these additional arrests, and now we're in Veterans Court. And then kind of go through that process a little bit.
Well, yeah, for me, I believe there has to be a connection for there to be a connection. I didn't check in when I first got out. I didn't check in ever. So I'd never met my probation officer. It would just be catch and release. Catch me when you can, and I got caught a lot. So obviously for me, the first time I was able to even hear that there was an opportunity for Veterans Court was multiple arrests in. I had no idea what that was about or anything, so I put in a request during one of my hearings in custody to be screened for Veterans Court. And up until that point, after multiple arrests, they didn't even know that I was a veteran, And so we kind of surprised them in their eyes. My public defender said, "Oh, you're a veteran. Why didn't you tell me that from the beginning?" And I looked at her and I said, "You didn't ask, I did see the benefits through the process of the rewards that you do get once you graduate from Veterans Court, and that was expungement of the record and things like that, So I decided I would go into it. Not that I was going to take it seriously, it was just like something to do. And I ended up in that Veterans Court for 15 months, and I ended up getting kicked out of the program and sent to prison. But I got to say that I wasn't ready to change. But I can say that I do have an appreciation for that side of it as well. The forced programs or rehabilitation, because it was a seed that was planted. I was able to, through that program at the Loma Linda VA, be put in these groups where the lady I call my mom to this day was my social worker at the time, and she brought my biological brother and sister into one of these groups, and they were able to express how much it would mean to them for me to get clean and sober and try to do something better with my life. I saw somebody that I cared about wanting for me to do something better, and for me, a lot of these things come in half baby steps, So for me, that want it led to a later time of me wanting it, So I had to start with the desire to want to change, And in my experience, that wasn't enough at the time for me to change. Well, yeah, to be honest with you, after I got out in 2015, I just started racking up mainly misdemeanors at first, And with misdemeanors, you're site released at worst, So it just meant my addiction was really picking up speed. That's where the heroin and then eventually the fentanyl really came into play. And my physical dependency upon heroin was a lot worse, So I managed to stay out of any kind of real time in jail up until the time I was arrested for a felony finally, and I finally did report to the probation office.
I'm Senior Probation Officer Amey. At the time, I was working out of the banning office when I was introduced to Clay. I was with the AB 109 high-risk supervision, adult clients who have committed prison offenses or been sent to prison. Upon meeting Clay, I've seen a variety of drug users within my career, so automatically he fits the profile, right? It's like, all right, cool, everything is as it should be, all right? It reads as the file. But the file only paints so much, so you don't get to really delve into the background unless you start asking the questions or until you start investigating more. So with Clay, it was, I remember meeting him, and I think we were going through questioning, whether it was through the case plan or through just my normal questioning. Just want to delve in a little bit more deeper into the addiction aspect of what kind of drugs he uses, things of that nature, or why he uses them. So we started getting into it a little bit in regards to his military background, because of course, this could be anything from I joined the military and I dropped out, right? I'm used to a lot of those cases. But then as we're talking, he starts going over like little things. But at one point in time, I remember it's like, yeah, I've taught at West Point. I was like, West Point, you know. And, you know, I'm looking at his age again, but at the time, he was 1 year under me. I was like, wow, this is the first time that I'm kind of at all, because literally, I believe like my adult life probably started at 26. And I think that was primarily the connecting point when I started looking, viewing at that file and seeing that, man, he has lived more lives than I could ever live. And he's here, so what can we do to get to the next step?
First of all, the first thing I remember about meeting Mr. Amey is that when he had the file and he asked me my age and he said, oh, we're about the same age. And to be honest with you, in my head, I was thinking, oh man, here we go, you know? But it wasn't like that, you know? And then I think the second thing he asked me was, can you give me a clean UA? And I told him, man, I do drugs. You know, it wasn't, I don't know what it was. His approach was completely different than anybody I'd ever experienced before, to be honest with you. A lot of times it's almost like you feel like he was saying, you know, you're written off. It's like you're a number, you're expected to fail, you know. And I didn't have that experience with him, you know. He sat there and he actually talked with me, and he gave me the opportunity to learn to trust that he did have the best intentions in mind. It did give me the opportunity to learn to build a trust, you know. It was definitely a process. I still at the time didn't understand that I really wanted help, you know. I knew at that time I started to get to the point where I felt like I couldn't do this forever, you know. I did have really depressive episodes, you know, PTSD that was deep-seated to the point where it didn't matter to me if I woke up the next day.
It was a completely different picture, right? So what brought him to this point, right? Of course, you know, the first thing that goes is PTSD. So it's one of those things where you're not going to, you know, from me and my perspective, Dylan, you're not going to say, hey, do you have PTSD? That's the issue, right? No. It's a little bit more subtle, because now there has to be a trust that's formed, right? So it's not going and attacking, but basically letting them know, like, hey, okay, I need you to let you know that I'm here for you. And from that point on, it's like, let's start at the base level. You know, here's my number. You call me when you need, you know. I have this line say, give me 24, 48 hours to respond, because, you know, there's a lot of things that go on, right? But I will respond. But I think the biggest thing is that you just talk to them as if they're human. Because I think, again, this is my opinion, for so long, especially at that stage, you said, you know, your public defender at the time was like, oh, why didn't you tell me you were, you know? They're not being heard anymore, you know? They're kind of seen as a number, and then when they're lost as a number, you don't even see the person. So now you have to kind of give them that time to humanize them, right? And say like, hey, I see you as a person, you're not just another number, right? Thank you for sharing your story. I think I even said that, because that is huge right there.
He built that rapport with me, you know, to be able to say, you know, I'm here to help you, you know, I want to help in whatever ways I can, you know. Once I told him, you know, I did drugs and I couldn't pass the UA, you know. He told me, you know, okay, I'm still here to help you, you know. I understand that, and I'm here to help when and if you want that help, you know. All you got to do is say the word. On the streets out there, it's really dangerous, and the circles that I was in were extremely dangerous. Whether it was just street violence, you know, or just the drugs that we were using were. I mean, fentanyl is a crazy deal, you know, and a lot of people have lost their lives to that drug. What really changed for me, and really wanting that help, was my brother ended up on the streets too, in the same area, you know, Tyler. And I could really see that he was really following the same path I was on, you know. He was also a justice-involved individual, you know. And seeing the life that he was starting to live, I didn't really want him to go through the same things that I did. At that point, it was just, before my brother came onto the streets, it was just me out there. You know, I isolated myself from anybody I really considered family or close to me, you know, and from the time that my brother came onto the streets, it just changed a lot for me. I cut out all the criminality, you know, and just to try to be a good example to my brother. And, but I didn't know how to stop using, you know, at all. And I could just remember him telling me, if you want the help, I'm here to help you, you know. And at this point, I did have to start using those baby steps I talked about. So I did start changing my behavior in a ways of I would report after I got out of jail. The biggest part is to have open communication, you know, and for me, that was really something I started to work on, this working relationship, if you will, with him. And it got me to the point where when my brother ended up passing away on the streets, and I was hurt for a while, and it could have, I was at a fork in the road, you know. I could have ended up going off the deep end again, even worse, you know, and probably ended up dead, more than likely, for sure. Or I could accept that help from an individual that I learned to trust. And when I got out of jail the last time, I went right into reporting. I think Mr. Amey was on vacation at the time.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that was exactly it.
and so I was like, man, I need help. I need to go into a program with the officer of the day.
Miss Hewitt.
Miss Hewitt, yeah, she's amazing as well. But I gave some conditions, you know. I was like, I mean, this has to be right now, you know, because I can't go out these doors and not use. I don't know how, you know, and I knew how dangerous it was for me. And at the time, I didn't have anything to my name, literally, no ID, no nothing. I didn't live like that, you know. I lived literally in the streets, and I hadn't been to the VA since I left that program in 2015, you know. So it'd been quite some time. And he was just there to help me learn how to do that. And I left the probation office, and I used, you know, because that's the only thing I knew how to do. But I was granted the gift of desperation at the time. That's what I call it in the program that I work, you know. And I knew I had to do something different, you know. So I had to immediately figure out how to do this for myself, you know. And at that time, I was able to separate myself and found a person that cares about me, that allowed me to stay on their couch until I was able to make it back in. I think it was like four days or so into the probation office that we had scheduled time. We had been back and forth on the phone once he was back from vacation, you know, and he was able to set up a time for me to go. I think I might have missed the first time, actually.
Right.
And he's like, come on, man, you know, like, come on, you got to do something. And but I was struggling internally, you know. I wanted to change, but it was the scariest thing I ever had to do, you know. So he gave me that next time. He's like, man, be here. I think it was the opening of the office the next day, and I was like, man, I'll be there. Whatever I got to do, I'll be there, you know. And so I ended up showing up finally, and yeah, my journey started from there, really.